Hello and welcome to the English Magnet. Today's video, the past perfect continuous made easy. We're dealing with an atypical verb tense in the English language with some interesting eccentricities. Buckle up as we'll clarify any ambiguity with the past perfect continuous. We'll cover its structure, different uses, the related key time words, and common mistakes to keep in mind. All right, let's go. Structure of the past perfect continuous. Okay, the past perfect continuous consists of three words. A first auxiliary, had, which marks the past form. A second auxiliary, the past participle of the verb to be, been, which marks the perfect tense, and a present participle, the ing form of a verb, which marks continuity. Pretty straightforward. Your two auxiliaries are like pillars. They never change, and they carry the third word. That's the present participle, the ing form, which actually carries the action. Anyhow, you just need to memorize the following: subject plus had plus been plus ing. Example: I had been digging. You had been joking. He had been transporting. If you feel like using a shortcut, go ahead and use the contraction '(D) to shorten had. Example: I'd been digging. You'd been joking. He'd been transporting. Just remember that in this case, '(D) isn't the contraction of would. You can be sure it's had, because it's followed by been. When forming a negative, just plug not between the two auxiliaries. Example: I had not been digging. You had not been joking. He had not been transporting. Yes, you're allowed to use a contraction with the negative form. Had plus not becomes hadn't. Example: I hadn't been digging. You hadn't been joking. He hadn't been transporting. When using the past perfect continuous in a question, just flip the order of the subject and had. Example: had I been digging? Had you been joking? Had he been transporting? Question words can be added at the very beginning of the sentence to form open questions. Example: where had I been digging? Why had you been joking? How long had he been transporting? Lastly, you can also form negative questions by adding not in its usual spot, or form a contraction. Example: where had I not been digging? Or where hadn't I been digging? Why had you not been joking? Or why hadn't you been joking? How long had he not been transporting? Or how long hadn't he been transporting? The ing form can sometimes be tricky because of spelling exceptions. For instance, you should drop the final E before adding ing to the verb. Doodle, doodling. Bubble, bubbling. Additionally, if a verb ends in EE, both E's are retained. Sightsee, sightseeing. Referee, refereeing. Also, Double the final consonant of short verbs ending with a vowel and consonant. Drip, dripping. Fit, fitting. Don't double W and X. Slow, slowing. Lax, laxing. Finally, watch out for verbs ending in IE and C. Change their ending a bit. IE turns into Y, tie, tying. And C needs to be followed with a K. Mimic, mimicking. Uses. Now, on to when we use the past perfect continuous. It's a rather uncommon verb tense, but it really helps you convey complex and precise thoughts, a great addition to your skill set. As we cover its uses, keep in mind that it's a tense relating to an action that began, happened, and ended in the past. Since we are using the continuous form, there is an emphasis on the process. You will note that the past perfect continuous is usually accompanied by another verb tense in the sentence. If not, then there's another action implied in the context. It can be used to talk about a cause of a past action. A past continuous action caused another past action. Example: the grass was slippery and I fell. Obviously, it had been raining earlier. The raining took place first and it caused me to fall. She had been watching too many movies last night, so she had a terrible headache. Watching happened first. Then the headache came next. The continuous form emphasizes the process of watching as the cause. Perhaps less screen time is better. It can be used to talk about interrupted past actions. An action taking place in the past is being stopped by another action in the past. The past perfect continuous helps convey the duration of the interrupted action. Example: we had been discussing the project for half an hour when the manager called us for a meeting. Discussing the project was ongoing in the past until the manager called a meeting, which was also in the past. He had been sleeping soundly throughout the cold night when the alarm clock buzzed. Sleeping was taking place for a certain period of time, and sadly, it had to end when the buzzing happened. It can be used to express a persistent or repeated situation or action before another action. This one is less self-evident. Since an action kept happening over and over, this represents the continuity factor. Example: they had been trying to reach an agreement for several weeks before they finally succeeded. The trying took place over several weeks, so we can conclude parties met on a daily or weekly basis. Thus, the trying was persistent and occurred many times before its conclusion. She had been exercising at the gym regularly before she injured her knee. The exercising was repeated on many occasions until an unfortunate end, the injury. It can be used to express an action happening before another action or before a certain point in the past. In order to focus on the continuous nature of the action, it is usually followed by a time marker. Example: she had been baking cookies all afternoon before the kids came home from school. Baking happened before the kids came home. Moreover, we know the baking took all afternoon. We had been rehearsing our karaoke songs extensively before the big night at the bar. The long rehearsing took place over a period of time leading up to karaoke night. Key time words. More often than not, time words are used with the past perfect continuous tense because they provide context and clarity about the action's duration or frequency in the past. Generally, a time word relating to the past works with the past perfect continuous, such as earlier, last night, yesterday, just to name a few. Let's cover some important cases. Talking about a duration, for. Use for to refer to a period of time. Add a length of time, not a precise moment, such as 2 days, the whole evening, or sometime. Example: they had been waiting at the airport for 3 hours before their flight was finally announced. Here, the past perfect continuous is accompanied by for to emphasize the duration of the action in the past. The focus is on the process. 3 full hours passed waiting before the announcement. They better be patient for the rest of the trip. The plant had been growing for several years before it finally produced flowers. The growing took place over many years, and it hints at the focus on all that time spent before flowers were produced. Talking about frequency, adverbs of frequency, every plus time word. Use an adverb of frequency to refer to the frequency of an action. This is very useful when expressing a repeated or persistent action. Example: the neighbors had been jogging twice a week before they moved abroad. Here, the adverb of frequency highlights how often a repeated action happened in the past. They had often been meeting for coffee on Sunday afternoon pre-COVID. Often gives us information on the frequency of the meeting and how persistent it was in the past. Common mistakes. Confusion with the past continuous. Although they can both express past continuous actions, they do it with a slight nuance. The past continuous will emphasize an action taking place at the same time as another one at a specific moment in the past, while the past perfect continuous focuses on an action happening prior to another one in the past, with an emphasis on the duration of said action. It's important to distinguish the two and their respective meanings. Example: Emily was exhausted because she was running. This sentence implies that Emily's running and her feeling of exhaustion were happening at the same time. The running was ongoing at the same moment when she felt exhausted. Emily was exhausted because she had been running. This sentence implies that Emily's running happened before she felt exhausted. The running had been happening for a duration and caused her exhaustion, which took place afterward. Adverb placement. Some adverbs of frequency are placed between the two auxiliaries, such as always, often, rarely, and never. Example: they had been often arguing before their relationship took a turn. Here, the word order is a bit awkward. The more natural placement of the adverb of frequency is between the auxiliaries had and been. So to sound more like a native speaker, you should say, they had often been arguing before their relationship took a turn. And that's a wrap. The past perfect continuous is a great tool for expressing actions that began and ended in the past. Start using it with confidence in your English conversations today. If you're in the mood, be sure to watch more of our videos. Hopefully, this has been helpful. A link to some free material to practice by yourselves can be found in the description below. Keep practicing, and you'll get the hang of it. Thank you for watching. Until next time.